is Mark Twain Speaks. Kindly listen as Mark Twain performer Don McNeil brings the wit and wisdom of America's favorite humorist to life. Everyone is welcome, and cigar smoking is encouraged.
I'm going to assume that I'm not the only one who, as a boy, ever lied about being sick in an attempt to stay home from school. I'm going to assume that everyone listening to me did that one time or another. But I wonder how many of you ever lied about being sick or hurt as an adult? Sick, perhaps. But how many of you ever lied about being injured so that you could gain an advantage in some respect? Well, I did that. I lied about being hurt, and I carried out that lie for 3 days. And it was at a time when I was trying to court my future wife, Olivia. And I've never been sorry that I did it. It sounds easy and swift and unobstructed, but that was not the way of it. It did not happen in that smooth and comfortable way. There was a deal of courtship. There were 3 or 4 proposals of marriage and just as many declinations. I was roving far and wide on the lecture beat, but I managed to arrive in Elmira every now and then and renew the siege. Once I dug an invitation out of Charles Langdon to come and stay a week, Olivia's father. It was a pleasant week, but it had to come to an end. I was not able to invent any way to get the invitation enlarged. No schemes that I could contrive seemed likely to deceive. They did not deceive me, and when a person cannot deceive himself, the chances are against his being able to deceive other people. But at last, help and good fortune came, and from a most unexpected quarter. It was one of those cases so frequent in the past centuries, so infrequent in our day, a case where the hand of Providence was in it. I was ready to leave the Langdons' home. I was ready to leave for New York. A wagon stood outside the main gate with my truck in it, and Barney, the coachman, in the front seat with the reins in his hand. It was 8 or 9 in the evening and very dark. I bade goodbye to the group family on the front porch, and Charlie and I went out and climbed into the wagon. We took our places back of the coachman on the remaining seat, which was aft toward the end of the wagon and was only a temporary arrangement for our accommodation, and it was not fastened in its place, a fact which, most fortunately for me, we were not aware of. Charlie was smoking. Barney took up the horse with a whip. He made a sudden spring forward. Charlie and I went over the stern of the wagon backward. In the darkness, the red butt of fire on the end of his cigar described a curve through the air, which I could see today. This was the only visible thing in all that gloomy scenery. I struck exactly on the top of my head and stood up that way for a moment, then crumbled down to the earth, unconscious. It was a very good unconsciousness for a person who had not rehearsed the part. It was a cobblestone gutter, and they had been repairing it. My head struck in a dish formed by the conjunction of 4 cobblestones. That depression was half full of fresh new sand, and this made a competent cushion. My head did not touch any of the cobblestones. I got not a single bruise. I was not even jolted. Nothing was the matter with me at all. Charlie, on the other hand, was considerably battered, but in his solicitude for me, he was substantially unaware of it. The whole family swarmed out. Theodore Crane in the van with a flask of brandy. He poured enough of it between my lips to strangle me and make me bark, but it did not abate my unconsciousness. I was taking care of that myself. It was very pleasant to hear the pitying remarks trickling around over me. This was one of the happiest half-dozen moments of my life. There was nothing to mar it except that I had escaped damage. I was afraid that this would be discovered sooner or later and might shorten my visit. I was such a dead weight that it required the common strengths of Barney and Mr. Langdon, Theodore and Charlie, to lug me into the house, but it was accomplished. I was there. I recognized that this was victory. I was there. I was safe to be an encumbrance for an indefinite length of time, but for a length of time at any rate, and a providence was in it. They set me up in an armchair in the parlor and sent for the family physician. Poor old creature. It was wrong to rout him out, but it was his business, and I was too unconscious to protest. Mrs. Crane, dear soul, she was in the house 3 days ago, gray and beautiful, and as sympathetic as ever. Mrs. Crane brought a bottle of some kind of liquid fire whose function was to reduce contusions, but I knew that mine would deride it and scoff at it. She poured this on my head and pawed it around with her hand, stroking and massaging, the fierce stuff dribbling down my backbone and marking its way, inch by inch, with the sensation of a forest fire. But I was satisfied. When she was getting worn out, her husband Theodore suggested that she take a rest and let Livy carry on the assuaging for a while. That was very pleasant. I should have been obliged to recover presently if it hadn't been for that. But under Livy's manipulations, if they had continued, I should probably be unconscious to this day. It was delightful, Livy's manipulations. So delightful, so comforting, so enchanting that they even soothed the fire out of that fiendish successor to the painkillers. Then that old family doctor arrived and went at the matter in an educated and practical way. That is to say, he searched for contusions and humps and bumps and announced there were none. He said that if I would go to bed and forget my adventure, I would be all right in the morning, which was not so. I was not all right in the morning. I didn't intend to be all right, and I was far from being all right. But I said I only needed a rest, and I didn't need that doctor anymore. I got a good 3 days extension out of that adventure, and it helped me a great deal. It pushed my suit forward several steps. A subsequent visit completed the matter, and we became engaged conditionally, the condition being that Livy's parents must consent to our marriage. I asked at the beginning if any of you ever lied as a child to get out of school. I ask again, did any of you ever lie and get a 3-day benefit out of that lie, as I did when I pretended to be injured and I was able to get 3 days with Livy to press my suit for marriage?